May 1945, Germany. The bodies were still there. 40 American soldiers lined up against a barn wall, shot in the back of the head. Executed. The SS officer who gave the order was sitting in a chair when Patton walked in, hands cuffed, uniform stripped of insignia, but still defiant. He looked up at Patton with something between contempt and indifference. Like 40 dead Americans meant nothing. The room went silent, everyone waiting to see what the general would do. Patton had seen death before, but this was different. These men hadn't died in combat. They'd surrendered, laid down their weapons, trusted the rules of war. And this SS officer had lined them up and shot them anyway. The interrogator asked Patton if he wanted to question the prisoner. Patton looked at the officer, then at the report in his hand. 40 names, 40 names, 40 families who would never see their sons again. What happened next would define whether justice or revenge ruled American occupation. This is what Patton said. Before we continue, make sure you subscribe. We tell the stories about World War II that show the hardest decisions and the humanity behind them. The execution happened 3 days earlier, April 28, 1945, outside a small town called Werfen in the Austrian Alps. The war was ending. Everyone knew it. Germany was collapsing. The Allies were closing in from all sides. But some SS units weren't surrendering. They were retreating into the mountains, taking prisoners with them. 40 American soldiers had been captured during the final German offensive. Battle-weary, out of ammunition, they'd raised their hands, surrendered, honorably. The SS took them, marched them east for 3 days, no food, little water. Anyone who fell behind was shot. On the third day, they reached Werfen, a small farming village. The SS commander decided they couldn't take the prisoners any further, so he made a decision. He ordered his men to line the Americans up against a barn wall. The prisoners knew what was coming. Some begged, some prayed, some just stood there resigned. One by one, SS soldiers walked down the line. Single shot to the back of each head. 40 men, 40 executions. It took less than 10 minutes. The SS unit left the bodies there, moved deeper into the mountains. 2 days later, American forces liberated Werfen. Local villagers led them to the barn. What they found made hardened combat veterans sick. 40 American soldiers, still in uniform, dog tags intact, hands bound behind their backs, single bullet wound in each skull. Execution style. The commander who found them was Colonel James Hayes. He'd been fighting since Normandy, seen plenty of death. But this was different. He radioed it up to Division. Division sent it to Corps. Corps sent it straight to Patton. Patton read the report, read it again. His jaw tightened. He got in his jeep immediately, drove to Werfen himself. By then, they'd caught the SS officer responsible. His name was Hauptsturmführer Klaus Weber, captain equivalent, 32 years old, career SS. Weber had been captured trying to flee through the mountains. American patrol found him with false papers. He claimed he was a regular Wehrmacht soldier. But one of the villagers recognized him, pointed him out. That's the officer who ordered the executions. They arrested him, brought him back to Werfen, put him in the same barn where the bodies still lay. That's where Patton found him. Weber was sitting in a wooden chair, hands cuffed in front of him. His SS Plenguist uniform had been stripped of all rank insignia. Just a gray tunic and pants. But he wasn't broken, wasn't scared. He sat there with his back straight, chin up, that SS superiority still in his eyes. Patton walked into the barn, 4 stars on his helmet, ivory-handled revolver on his belt, boots echoing on the wooden floor. The room fell silent. American soldiers stood along the walls, MPs guarding Weber, investigators, medical personnel processing the bodies outside. Everyone stopped, watched Patton. He walked slowly toward Weber, stopped 10 feet away. Weber looked up at him, didn't flinch, didn't look away. Colonel Hayes stepped forward. "Sir, this is the SS officer who gave the order. We have witnesses, villagers who saw it happen." Patton said nothing, just stared at Weber. Weber stared back. The silence stretched. 30 seconds, a minute. Finally, Weber spoke. In accented English, "I was following orders. The prisoners were slowing us down. We had no choice." Patton's expression didn't change. "Orders," Patton repeated, quiet, almost conversational. "Yes. Orders from my commanding officer. I am a soldier. I followed orders. Patton nodded slowly, like he was considering it. Then he walked closer, stopped right in front of Weber. You're not a soldier, Patton said. His voice was calm, controlled. Soldiers fight other soldiers. You executed prisoners of war. That makes you a murderer. Weber's jaw tightened, but he didn't respond. Patton turned to Hayes. Where are the bodies? Outside, sir. We're documenting everything for the war crimes investigation. Show me. Hayes hesitated. Sir, it's bad. Show me. They walked outside, behind the barn. 40 American soldiers laid out in rows. Medical personnel photographing each one, recording names from dog tags. Patton walked down the rows, looked at each face. Some were young, maybe 20. Some older, veterans. All dead, all murdered. He stopped at the end of the line, stood there for a long moment. Then he turned and walked back into the barn. Weber was still sitting there, still defiant. Patton sat down in a chair across from him, pulled out the list of names, placed it on the table between them. 40 men, Patton said. 40 American soldiers. I'm going to read you their names, and you're going to sit there and listen. Weber's eyes flickered, first sign of emotion. Patton started reading. Private First Class Robert Chen, Boston, Massachusetts. Age 21. He looked at Weber. Weber said nothing. Sergeant Thomas O'Brien, Chicago, Illinois. Age 28. 3 kids. Weber's face stayed blank. Corporal James Washington, Atlanta, Georgia. Age 22. Patton kept reading. Name after name. Hometown. Age. Some had families. Some didn't. Every single one had been somebody's son. 40 names. It took 10 minutes. When Patton finished, he put the list down. Those are the men you murdered, Patton said. Weber finally spoke. I did what was necessary. This is war. Patton leaned forward. No. War is when 2 soldiers meet on a battlefield and one kills the other. That's war. What you did was line up defenseless men and shoot them in the back of the head. That's not war. That's murder. Weber's defiance cracked slightly. What difference does it make? You Americans bomb our cities, kill our women and children. Don't lecture me about rules. Patton's eyes went cold. The difference is this. When American bombers hit civilians, it's a tragedy, a terrible consequence of war. But when you execute prisoners, it's a choice. You looked those men in the eyes. You knew their names, and you killed them anyway. He stood up. You're going to stand trial. You're going to answer for what you did, and if there's any justice in this world, you're going to hang. Weber looked up at him. I'm a prisoner of war. Geneva Convention protects me. Patton smiled, cold, humorless. The Geneva Convention protects soldiers. You're not a soldier. You're a war criminal. And war criminals hang. He turned to Hayes. Get him out of my sight. Send him to the War Crimes Tribunal. Make sure every detail is documented. I want this son of a bitch to face justice. Hayes nodded. Yes, sir. Patton walked toward the door, stopped, turned back to Weber. You know what the difference is between us and you? Patton said. We're going to give you a trial. We're going to let you defend yourself. We're going to follow the law. Even though you didn't give those 40 men the same courtesy. Weber said nothing. That's what separates civilization from barbarism, Patton continued. Not that we're perfect, but that we try. We hold ourselves to a standard, even when it's hard, even when scum like you make us want to throw that standard away. He looked at the American soldiers in the room. Every man in this room wants to put a bullet in your head right now. You know that, every single one of them. But they won't. Because we're not you. We don't execute prisoners. Patton walked out. Klaus Weber was transferred to the Nuremberg detention facility. He stood trial in October 1945. The evidence was overwhelming. Witness testimony, physical evidence, his own confession. He was found guilty of war crimes, sentenced to death by hanging. On March 15, 1946, the sentence was carried out. Before the execution, Weber was asked if he had any final words. He said, I was following orders. The same defense. Until the very end. The 40 American soldiers he executed were returned home, buried with full military honors. Their families received their medals, their flags, their dog tags, but no closure, no answer to the question that haunted every family. Why? Why were their sons executed? Why couldn't Weber have just let them go? Why did 40 men have to die for nothing? Patton never forgot that day in Werfen, never forgot reading those 40 names, aloud. Years later, when asked about the hardest moment of the war, he didn't talk about battles, didn't talk about strategy or tactics. He talked about that barn, those 40 bodies, and the look in Klaus Weber's eyes when he said he was just following orders. Patton said, "The moment I realized we weren't just fighting an army, we were fighting an ideology that could turn ordinary men into executioners. And the scariest part, they didn't even think they'd done anything wrong. That's what separated soldiers from murderers. Soldiers had a conscience. Soldiers understood the weight of taking a life. Weber never did."
Would you have given Weber a trial? Or would you have delivered justice on the
spot? Let us know in the comments. And if you want more stories about World War, OSO, and the hardest human decisions, make sure to subscribe.